All right, hi everybody. Sorry I am late, or if you were just watching the start of the video I did a second ago, sorry for the aborted video attempt. A bit of technical difficulties, but back on track. Amanda is not joining me today because she isn't feeling well, so I'm going to fly solo on this second video about SEO or search engine optimization. The last one went pretty well. People seem to like that. There are some follow-up questions, and I'm going to answer those. But in case you're watching this and you didn't catch that video, I'll cover the idea here briefly of what SEO is. SEO, search engine optimization, is this idea that you're helping the search engines find content on generally your blog, but it also applies to a venue like YouTube, helping YouTube as a search engine find your videos. So you're putting stuff out there and then you're trying to do things that convince search engines to put that content in front of strangers that are Googling things or YouTubing things. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I've got some questions up here. Briefly noting the venue, you are in my office where I tend to record YouTube videos. That's why you see this guy here. Since I'm on my own, I'll just, record the way I would normally record. So this is my office in the woods in this little like knotty pine room. It's pretty cozy. So yeah, from this venue, let's talk about search engine optimization. Okay, so the first question is, how do I track or measure important SEO metrics? I guess the first thing I'll say is, what are these metrics? If you're tracking search engine optimization for your blog, let's say, the first thing I might want to measure is just where does the blog post rank. So if you write a blog post that's like, how to cook a steak, and you're optimizing for the term how to cook a steak, that's like, when we talk about optimizing for a term, search terms are kind of questions that people ask a search engine, and generally speaking, anything you're typing into a search engine is sort of an implied question. And the way you optimize in 2019 for a search term is you do a good job answering that question. It's a lot harder to game things. So let's look at this from the perspective of, if you're doing an SEO focused strategy for your blog, you're deciding on a question that people are asking the search engine, and then you're answering that question. So one of the first metrics that you're going to be looking at is, in general, if you're optimizing for this term, if you're answering this question, where does the search engine put you in the rankings for that question? So if you're looking for what I said, what was it, like how to cook a steak? Where do you rank if you type how to cook a steak into the search engine? If you're number one, that's great. You're going to get something like, well, I think approaching 20% of the traffic that hits that page. If you're number three, it's something in the single digits. If you're kind of down towards the bottom of the front page, it's small. And then if you're not on the front page, nobody's clicking on you. You want to be on the front page. So that's one metric, just where are you ranking. Another metric that you want to track, I think, is the number of visits you get, like what the click-through rate is and how many people are hitting that page. So if you write a blog post called How to Cook a Steak, and your goal is to rank for how to cook a steak, hopefully you rank for that, but you might rank for a bunch of other stuff as well. So you might be in the top 10 search results for a variety of terms in and around steaks, maybe seasoning, I don't know, whatever. So those different search engine results page might all drive traffic to your blog. So you also want to be keeping track of how many people actually land on this page, and you're going to measure that over the course of time. And then there are a couple of other things that are a little more nuanced that you'll want to be tracking. One of them is called bounce rate. And this is basically a measure of when people actually get onto your page. What do they do? Do they get onto the page, read it, and then that's the only thing they visit, and then they leave? Or do they click on something, engage with you somehow, share the post on social media? Generally speaking, you want a lower bounce rate. You want people to do more than just land on the page and that's it. But high bounce rate isn't always a bad thing. This is a nuanced concern. So if we're just talking about what to measure bounce rate, don't worry too much about it in the early stages. You'll maybe take action based on that later. And I think those are kind of the big ones. There might be others that I'm missing off the cuff, but where are you ranking? How much traffic are you getting? And what is that traffic doing? Are they engaging with you? That's kind of what's important for a piece of content, at least in the beginning. On a long timeline, especially if this isn't a hobby blog of yours, but you're doing it as a commercial enterprise, you're going to want to measure, in a sense, return on investment. So if you get this traffic, do they convert to becoming leads? Do they download a trial of your product? Do they buy something from you? Because that's really, in a commercial venture, what this is all about in the end. But that's a little more nuanced. How do you measure that customer journey all the way through? So maybe don't worry about that if you're just getting started. Okay, so the next question is, what is Google Analytics and how do I use it? Google Analytics is a utility that Google makes available to you. You can basically put a little script on your blog, or if you're doing something like WordPress, you can get a plugin. And what this does is it sort of sends a bunch of data back to Google, who takes that data in and provides it back to you in a way that's like easily consumable. So this is a great way, for instance, to get data about how many people are landing on this page. Google Analytics provides that data to you. They also provide data around bounce rate. I don't think right offhand Google Analytics itself provides any data to you about where your posts are ranking in their search results. You can get that information elsewhere. But Google Analytics actually provides a lot of cool data if you're kind of a data geek. So you can see who visited your site, but you can also see things like what country did they come from, what browser, what operating system are they using, are they on a mobile device? So you can start to learn a fair bit of information about your audience and get in there and poke around. It's just kind of fascinating. And then again, if you're doing this for more commercial purposes, you're probably going to use that data beyond like, hey, look, cool, someone from Greenland landed on my site. So Google Analytics, the TLDR is that it's a way to get a lot of data about the people that are visiting your site. Let's see. Next question. How long does it take for SEO efforts to pay off? So this is kind of probably going to be more, well, I guess it doesn't have to be commercial. If your goal is just to build a following and, you're a hobby blogger or something, and you're looking to bring people in initially via organic search, you might be interested there too. But certainly if you're investing in content as part of your business, you're going to want to know, how long before I can expect to see results. That's really hard to answer. The big players in the space like Moz and Ahrefs, they do a lot of research on this, and they'll say things that are sort of hedges like, well, we analyzed all this information and we found that the average number one rank on a Google search is like 2 years old or something. Because nobody's going to be holding me to anything in this venue, I will say if you're a brand new site and you do things right, but you don't have much of what's called domain authority, you're new, search engines don't trust you yet, you're not getting a lot of people to the site initially. If you do everything right, maybe 6 months to a year, that's when you're going to start to expect to see these articles you're writing drive traffic. We have a site where we're kind of running lab experiments, and about 6 months in, we've started to get organic traffic. If you're more established, like you have a blog that has some domain authority, meaning you've got visitors, you've got inbound links, you've already got some traffic, and you write a blog post, maybe that looks more like 3 months that you can expect a post to start ranking kind of in those top 5 if you do everything right. And if you're something huge like Amazon or Microsoft, it can be as little as a week. But so I would say on average, in terms of driving the traffic, which then maybe we'll go through and some percentage of them will buy things, I would say on average, 6 months is probably what you can expect if you're a smallish site. So it is definitely a long game. Okay, what's next? What are canonical links and why are they important? So this is something that happens more in Hit Subscribe's world, where we're enlisting, it's called practitioner content. We're enlisting software developers to go write content for software and tech-related blogs. And a lot of our authors are going to be doing what's known as cross-posting. So it goes on the client site, and then the author posts it on his or her own blog later and says, I originally posted this on such and such site. That has the potential to create a problem, it's the duplicate content problem. And if you're a search engine and you see a piece of content, hey, great, I'm going to index this, maybe I'll rank it. then what do you do if you see that same piece of content in 5 other places and maybe it's on a different site? That starts to look spammy. Like maybe you don't know what these people are up to, but it seems kind of shady. So what do you do as the search engine? You kind of write all that content off and say, look, I don't know what you people are trying to pull, but I'm not serving this to anybody. This seems like a scheme. Canonical linking is a way to have duplicate content but not get penalized for it or de-indexed through the search engines, because what you're doing is you're saying canonical means like this is the official instance of it. If you're doing canonical linking from one post to another, you're saying this is the source, and hey, Mr. Search Engine, don't index me, instead go here and index this other piece of content. So that's what a canonical link is. And it's important because there are various reasons that you would want to probably have duplicate content. Like the simplest one is on your own site. Maybe you want to show a reader the same thing in multiple venues because it's a good user experience. You don't want to, on every page that you're making a point, say, oh, well, it turns out we've actually made this point somewhere else, so go link over here and see it. No, you might want to include that content right in line on a second page, but you tell the search engine, if the search engine is indexing that page, like, don't bonk me for this and delist it. Like this is, we're only asking for an index once. And then to circle back to the case I mentioned with hit subscribe, what we're doing when our authors are cross-posting is saying to the search engine, hey, you see this content here, but it's really, on the client side. That's where you want to go look for it. That's the official version. Pay attention to that one. For those of you who have some experience in this field, it is worth mentioning that when you do what's called canonical linking, first of all, on a side, the way that actually works from a nuts and bolts perspective is that you, in the meta of the post, sort of the HTML in the tags that you don't actually see on the page, there is a way to include a canonical link. It's called rel equals canonical. So it's a bit of technical stuff that goes in the HTML of the page. That is the how of it. And so if you're familiar with this, one thing that bears in mind is if you include this meta, if you say here is the canonical source, you are not giving Google or any of the search engines an order. You're giving them a suggestion, and you're saying, I suggest that you consider this to be a canonical piece of content. It is always possible that the search engines disregard that and just rank or not, whichever version of that they want. My experience is 99.9% of the time they take you up on that suggestion, but buyer beware, it is not a guarantee. All right, so the last thing I have here, what is the best length of an article for SEO purposes? This is getting into the territory of opinion. If you go out and you do research, again, from these sites like Moz and Ahrefs, you will get different opinions, and it will evolve over the course of time. Sometimes they change their minds on this, and that's because everybody is trying to reverse engineer how the search engines are ranking articles. Historical wisdom for a while was the longer the better. So it was just a question of how much time and money are you willing to invest in longer and longer form content. I have seen some arguments that say there is a point of diminishing or even negative returns. So, if you post something that's like 50,000 words, that might be too much. It might hurt your ranking. I wouldn't worry about any of that if I were you, especially if you're kind of like newer to the game or you're just trying to start blogging and rank. I would stick with the general wisdom that the more content on a page, the better for you. It's really about like the more information you want to provide the searchers with as good an experience and as detailed an experience as possible. One thing that you can do is, I can't go and say like, write a bunch of 2,000 word articles and yeah, you're good, those will rank. If you've got a term, if we go back to our example of like how to cook a steak, and you type that into Google, you can start looking at the top ranking results and do a quick count, paste the results into Word and just get a feel for what the word count of those top ranking articles is. That is the search engine kind of telling you, hey, generally speaking, the results that searchers like the best are, 1,800 to 3,000 words in length. So that's a great way to see what the length of an article that's currently ranking is and maybe do it a little bit better. So if those competitor articles for how to cook a steak are 2,500 words in length, maybe you want to go out and kind of cover all the points they're covering and even add a few more so that you've got like a 3,500 word article. The general term for this in the industry is known as skyscraper content. You're finding the best and then beating it. I forget why that's called skyscraper, I guess, because here are these buildings and you're building a taller one. So it depends on the search. If it's a search that's super non-competitive, you could probably write like a 400-word blurb and do all right. If it's a really competitive word search with like these monstrous articles that are ranking from high authority sites, it might not matter how many words you write, but if you're gonna do it, you better write a lot. So it's really contextual. See what your competition is doing, try to do a little bit better. And if it's kind of over the top, maybe pick a different term that's not going to break your back, only not to rank. So that is the end of this particular list of questions. If folks are liking this, that's great. I'm happy to answer more questions. We will gather them up and, if there's enough demand, maybe make this a regular installment. I'm especially interested in those of you who maybe are out there and thinking of starting a blog, like a hobby blog, whether it's recipes or your own personal travels or like a mommy blog or whatever it is. That's not our domain, but I'd be interested in questions that people have about how to build a following with those types of blogs, simply because variety is the spice of life, but also because I can speak from experience. The way most people start out trying to build a blog, when you just think, oh, I should blog, I should be like Rand Fishkin's The Everywhereist, I forget her name, but like travel bloggers or influencers, these people that have really big followings, you start out thinking like, I'm going to be like that, and then you write a post, and like everyone in your network's like, hey, cool, Steve is blogging, like, yeah, go. And then you write a second post and almost no one reads it, and then by the third, no one pays attention, and it gets depressing and you stop. I kind of went the hard way blogging into the vacuum for years and years, and I built a following of thousands of people, but it was super labor intensive. Like, if you go the answering search questions SEO route, it's a much easier path to getting traffic and to gaining some traction. And so I'm interested in questions those of you who are thinking of blogging or maybe sporadically trying to start blogging have, because I feel like you could maybe gain some traction in a different way than you've probably thought of before. So please feel free to weigh in with those or any other questions you might have. And I will catch you next week. Probably Amanda will be back. We'll probably do a different sort of topic, but we may make this SEO question and answer session a regular feature of these Facebook Lives. So thanks, and I'll catch you next time.